Alrighty, welcome to another episode of the One Last Cast podcast. My name is Jonathan, and as always, we have Merrill Solesky here. Say hi, Merrill.
Yo, what's going on?
We're in the middle of spring now. I think if you follow our social media, which you can find us at facebook.com/, One Last Cast podcast, I sent a meme out the other day where if you're familiar with Pawn Stars, it's those characters there. Is like, can we get a nice day in April? And they're saying the best we can do is nice and sunny and 80 miles an hour winds. So we're basically in the middle of that right now. The last few days, actually probably the last week, we've been looking at 20, 30 mile an hour winds. And yeah, it's spring. Aren't you excited for that, Merrill?
Yeah, it did lay down in my area last night. So that is I saw that happen last night, and then like all these bugs started coming out of nowhere because I guess the wind's down. But yeah, it's definitely been windy, like crazy windy lately. Like I don't know, dangerous windy, really. Yeah. What
Yeah,
is your? Go ahead.
I was going to say that yeah, that's just typical spring, and I know there's quite a few anglers who, especially since we're basically mostly kayak based, for us that they look at the winds and anything over 15 miles an hour and they just don't go out. Um, Unfortunately for us and for all the other kayakers out there who are just hardcore and diehard fishermen, um, that's not going to work out because during the spring you're going to have weeks upon weeks of just 20 mile an hour winds. So you're going to have to just choose the days that you can go and figure out what you're going to do. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I think that's what our show is going to be about. But before we start, let's give a shout out to our sponsors here, Dirty South Kayak Anglers. If you're looking for a Facebook group to talk fishing with on here up and down the Texas coast, search DSKA or Dirty South Kayak Anglers on Facebook. Great group of guys and gals on there. Foray Printing, they do. Aaron does our custom merch, such as our buffs, our towels. Here's an example for one of the buffs he does with our logo on it. Reach out to Aaron, and he'll get you taken care of. Also, Knocking Tail Lures, our go-to paddle tail soft plastic. Merrill and I have been using it for the last few years. They've been great. I do want to say that you know, for most of the time, paddle tails that's definitely what we're going to be used. But just because they're a sponsor and they support our what we do, there are other stuff that we use. It's not always just knocking tails. Like, I have an affinity for straight tails, like bass assassins, saltwater assassins, and I'm sure you have other products too that you use. But the reason why we talk about them so much is because they work real well for paddle tails. That rattle in the tail is it's awesome. So if you're looking for those kind of soft plastics, go to knockingtaillures.com and get your order set up. Also, we wouldn't be here without Meryl's lovely wife, Brittany Solesky, and her support. If you're looking for a realtor here in Houston, whether you're buying or selling a home or looking for commercial real estate, she can help you with your whatever goals that you have. So you can reach her at 281-740-0498 or Brittany Solesky at gmail.com. That's Brittany, that's Britney Solesky at gmail.com. So with that out of the way, Merrill, have you been fishing lately?
Okay, I did. Okay, I don't consider it fishing if I go to my walk up spots because those are like just a must, right? Like that's just what I go through. Like I'll walk up to a spot, fish bulkheads because I live by the water. So to me, that's not considered fishing. So if we take that out, then the answer is no. I haven't been fishing in these big ones. Um, have I caught fish? Yes, I've caught fish, but it's been really windy, like windy lately. Like I wish I had the opportunity to go like on the when the wind's blowing out of the south to go on the south shoreline and fish, but not on a kayak. Maybe on a yeah, I'd probably wade fish. I think that would be my best thing to do is wade fish during these times because I mean you cannot like not fish, right? Like that's not in the equation to not fish. But th- let me just answer your question. No, I don't consider that fishing. Walking into bulkheads, casting it a couple times because that's just my natural routine.
According
Not
to
fishing the way I
Merriam,
like it.
according to Merriam-Webster, the dictionary, that is
Oh,
fishing.
okay.
To
Oh,
you
okay.
know,
All right. Well,
fishing
then
is the definition is to attempt to catch a fish. So, I think you're good.
yeah. Okay. Well, the ants. I. So okay. Yes, then.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, it's I've I've been out there last week. I had the pleasure to go with Paul Koch. Been a great guy. We've been friends for a while, um, and we've just been the last year. Actually, I think it's the first year in a while that we just didn't have the opportunity to fish together, and just because our schedules have never aligned. And last week it finally did. We went out there. The caveat, I was throwing croaker, just throwing it out there. I love throwing croaker on occasion. It,
Tis
it,
the season to throw
it
croaker.
it's the season. Especially nowadays where, I'm a weekend warrior. I only go basically. I try to go once a week, but only on the weekends. And my fishing time is limited. And they're just, especially after tough spells. It hasn't been a tough spell, but for me, but there are just times I just want to go out there and catch fish, and I know where I can go with croaker and at least get some bites out there. So we went out there, basically fishing these deep drop offs. And along those drop offs, which is croaker, free lining them out with the chatterweight, leader line, a bead, and a little small, tiny tungsten weight, and then a 2-aught circle kale hook, um, and just throwing it out there. And the action wasn't fast by any means. There are certain times when it was like basically back to back to back casts. But we caught our limit, 2-man limit of trout, a few flounder, but man, we caught 9, 10 trout over 5 pounds. None of them over like 5.5, but between 4 and 5 pounds. And it was just an awesome, awesome day. We got out there and I was trying to throw top waters at first. Right when the sun came up, we kind of had uh, I know we're talking about high winds, but at this day it was slick, calm conditions. Tide was a little bit higher than what it was supposed to be, but it was just slick, calm, and we were out there I was trying to throw top water, nothing. Paul threw on a croaker. First cast, he had a hit, he missed it. So I put on the croaker, and that first, right when it hit the water, just bowed up on like a nice 4.5 pound trout. And that's how it was, for the day. Like every so often, you catch a good 17, 18-inch trout, and then the next one's going to be a 4 pounder. So it was just like it came in cycles, and it was great. Um, and actually, another waiter beat us to where I wanted to go. There's an area where over there that I think it's a higher chance of catching redfish, and wanted to catch some redfish, but the other waiter got there first. So I was like, we're gonna go a different area. So we kind of weighted the other direction like 200 yards or so, 300 yards, to a kind of a cut where it was another steep drop off. And I was like, if I've been here before, there's big trout here. Um, the biggest one I think my dad caught out of there was probably like a 7.5 pound trout from that spot. And like, I know they're here. As we won't get as many bites, but if you just work this edge, they'll be here. And it, yeah, I was right. They weren't, it wasn't on fire by any means, but we got that one bite that turned up to be like a 5.5, 6 pound trout, and it was great. So
Yeah,
yeah,
let's talk about that setup. The way you said that setup. So I am not a good croaker fisherman. So I admit that there is technique and strategy with croaker fishermen or croaker fishing. And I know I joke and we joke a lot and like, oh, whatever. But there's this strategy, a technique to it. When to set the hook and all that jazz. What hook to use. I know people get creative with the leader. And I'm talking about not just the hook, but from the hook to your main line. People use swivels. I've heard people use pinch weights. I've heard people use the little rattlers,
yep,
and they vary. And then some people put beads either before or after. Um, so I mean, there's more to that setup. what made you throw the setup that you threw, and if it's worked for you in the past, what made you? Is there where you fished that made you use that kind of setup, or is that just your setup you use for croaker? With respect to the chatter weight, I'm guessing because of current and whatnot, right? Is that
Yeah,
the
so,
reason you changing the sizes on that chatter weight? But yeah,
yeah,
I'm gonna let you talk about that because I don't have a setup this is what I use for croaker. I do not have that setup. So yeah, help me understand this
yeah.
croaker.
So this is the setup that I have is going to if I'm free lining croaker, this is exactly what I'm gonna do. It's gonna be a chatterweight. It doesn't matter if it's the white one or the one with the foil, on it, just whatever chatterweight that you have. You have the leader line, and on that leader line, you're probably gonna need probably like a foot and a half of leader. Um, and then on that leader, it's gonna be your bead. I try to find glass beads. If I can't find any glass beads, the multifaceted kind of glass beads looking thing. Which, by the way, if you can't find them, Hobby Lobby usually has a couple options. If you can't find them at Academy, so here in Pearland, there's a Hobby Lobby right next to it. So I've been over there and like, oh, I can find them here. So another pro tip if you're looking for that.
Any color in specific? Like if I'm throwing chartreuse chatterweight, would I use a chartreuse weight, or do you switch up the colors, or does color not matter?
To
And is
me,
that glass bead like from the chatterweight to the hook
yeah,
sliding back and
it
forth?
slides back and
Okay,
forth. Yeah, it
okay.
slides back and forth. I'm partial to red because that's just what I have, and uh,
It
yeah,
means
I wouldn't even.
blood because it's bleeding croaker and
Yeah, maybe,
fishing the
I don't
bleeding
know.
croaker. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
Or
I
pink
know.
because it's
So like if you go to like those really hardcore like steelhead and salmon and trout fishermen up north, they swear up and down because they have a lot of beads and stuff like that and feathers associated with their the styles of fishing that they do on these creeks and rivers that they're fishing for those fish, and they swear up and down about the color of the bead matters. I don't know if that's the case. So like for me, it's just red has always been the one I use. Um, I will say, and I don't want to call Paul out, but I'm going to call him out right here. um, is We were out there. He's fishing next to me. We're using the croaker, um, and I think he caught like 3 fish the entire day. Where I basically smoked him. We had a good time. It's a good having company there. But I felt kind of bad. Like he just
I'm just gonna throw that out there. I
yeah.
smoked them.
um,
Okay,
yeah.
quick question. What is the topic? We're talking about croaker fishing.
No, yeah,
Robert.
yeah.
No,
Yeah, we're
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 gonna
we're
change
definitely
the topic to
we're all in
croaker.
on just croaker fishing. We're just no more artificial. We're just doing croaker fishing from now on. But we're talking about spring fishing, and I just had a recently good trip using croaker, and we're kind of expounding upon it, which I know we will lead into kind of spring and the high winds and spring tide, the bull tides that we have. But yeah, to finish up, originally what you're asking is the chatterweight, leader line, a foot and a half, the red bead, and then I use the smallest tungsten weight that I can, or I'm sorry, not tungsten. It's a small brass weight. It's a little cylinder, a brass cylinder, and then it goes to a 2-aught kale hook. And that's I'm sorry, that's KHALE. That's how you spell it. Kale hook. Um, it's basically like I think it's an inline circle hook that just has an offset gap on it. I'm not 100% sure if that's right or not, but I'm trying to remember from memory. But anyways, it's the kale hook is what you're looking for, and that hook size really depends on the size of the croaker that you're using. If you have really big croaker, you may want to upsize that a little bit. I know Jay, he's gonna give me crap. If it ain't on artificial, then it's not official. Yeah, I'm catching fish. Okay, that's really all I care about. um, but yeah, so you have that kale hook. It depends on the size of the croaker because sometimes when you go to the bait shop and we have croaker, and it's just like these little tiny little ones that your hook is bigger than the than the bait, and sometimes you just have massive ones where your hook is just dwarfed by that size. So it kind of depends. You want to me, the 2-aught for most of the time, what the bait shops are in here in Galveston carry. Um, that's probably the perfect size, but I have sized up and down depending on, what the croaker that we had. Um, But yeah, going back to Paul, he was with me. He had a slightly different setup. He had the chatterweight. His bead was fluorescent green, and he had a kale hook as well. I don't know if he had the tungsten, not tungsten. I keep saying tungsten, the brass weight with it.
Okay, quick question. That brass weight,
Yes,
is that like in between your hook and the bead, or is
correct.
it between the bead and the chatterweight?
I found so again, this is a preference thing. And from my personal experience, and I don't know if there's any really logic beside this, just because I use it and it works. It's always the hook, the brass weight, then the beat. So I do know that they make noise. Like if you like just shake it, along with the chatterweight underwater, they click together, and they make a noise. Again, if you switch it up, maybe that helps. One of the things I do like is because since it's free floating, that brass, that brass cylinder, it's gonna be closer towards the hook to help kind of offset it, and I think that kind of helps slow your croaker down, especially when you have real lively croaker. That's gonna, imagine that croaker is just pulling a weight, weight behind it, um, and that's gonna help it, kind of not get it lethargic, but also like give it a handicap when it's trying to run away from something trying to eat it. So
Make him seem a little injured, right? I'm trying to put a
yeah,
little
yeah,
bit of science behind it. So we got the
yeah,
blood beads,
yeah,
the
the
blood
blood beads.
chatterweight, the
Yeah,
brass banging up against the glass bead and the hook to give it that little hey dinner bell here,
yeah,
and then some of these trout, they like brass, right? They don't like
yeah.
gold, they don't like platinum, they don't like ice, they like the
Well,
brass. You
the
know what I'm
reason why I
saying?
brought up, so like Paul, like I said, he was next to me the entire time. We had the same croaker. We got from the same place. We had it in two separate buckets, but they're all roughly the same size. And he's next to me, and he's just, for some reason with that, his setup was just slightly different. It- it- um, for whatever reason, I just they weren't hitting his bait, and maybe it had something to do with that green bead, maybe with some other comment, maybe his leader was too short. I don't know, but that was what's very interesting because generally, whenever I go croaker fishing, I'm just thinking I'm letting the bait do the croaker is the one that's attracting the trout or the predator fish to you, and for whatever reason, they just didn't find that enticing. So
Oh, are you one? Okay, I'm trying to understand. So, like, if you're working a grass flat with a croaker, or you work in reef or a drop off, do you pop it or you don't pop it in those different scenarios? Go ahead.
yeah, so for heavy grass, I've fished in heavy grass with croaker before, and that's so difficult. Just because the first thing the croaker's going to do is like, oh, there's cover. I'm going to go towards it, and they're just going to bury themselves in there. The fish will find it, but the thing is that you definitely need to keep popping it, but you're going to get a lot of grass, and you're going to have to constantly. I think you do more harm just because you have to you pop it, and eventually you just have so much grass accumulated that you're gonna bring it in, take off the grass, recast it out there, and it's just that constant of trying to bring it in and reset your rig is just you're gonna kill your croaker. So you go through a lot like that. But yeah, I no matter where I'm at, if I'm fishing next to a reef, on a reef, I try to just let it to get to where I want it to, and then I pop it and then let it sit, keep constant tension on it. I will say that one of the things that I did notice with Paul, and I'm sorry, Paul, I know I'm calling you out on it, but I think this is a good learning moment. Um, if at all possible, um, use a bait caster. It's just easier because when they hit, one thing that I can do if I'm not in a good position where usually I'm trying to keep my rod straight up. That way, when they hit, I can work. I can follow the fish down when he's pulling. Um, and then, but for him, with a spinning reel, okay. So I can follow the fish down, and also I have the opportunity to open the spool. Just push the button, and the spool is free. It's free spool, and it can pull out line if it needs to. Uh, it's very unless you have a practice hand with the spinning reel, you get that hit, and if you need to let out more line, it's a little bit more difficult to you have to make that extra motion to just open the bail and let that go. Or if I guess also you have those bait runner style spinning reels, those work real well as well. So um, I would recommend a baitcaster, but if you're opposed to baitcasters, and just be sure to let out some line. So yeah, you're basically working it, pop it every so often. You're gonna feel a hit. That hit on a croaker is going to be one of the best hits you've ever felt. It's just a thump, like especially those big trout, big reds, even big gaff top, whatever. They hit it hard. um, and it's just sometimes it's like those bone rattling kind of like bone jarring hits. Like it reverberates up your arm, and then basically from that point on, you either follow the fish down. That's why you keep tension. Sometimes they hit the bait. You just feel nothing after that, and that means they're running towards you. So you just have to reel and catch up to them. Or other times you follow down and you just let your rod tip go down. You free spool, let them take some line, and then you just kind of re-engage and kind of pull back on it, and you're good. And you have yourself a fish. So.
It reminds me of a corky thump, and that's one of the
Mm.
reasons I love throwing corkies and fat boys, because it's the same. Well, I wouldn't say same, but it's just as hard as a croaker thump when they thump it,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's like boom, and it's like, oh man. And I like, that's one of my favorite baits to throw, is a fat boy. It's my favorite corky to throw.
Yeah,
Um,
it's addicting, and I
yeah.
think that thump is the reason why I do fish both the corky and also the croaker.
Uh-huh.
Um,
It's just
it's
such a good hit. It's just
yeah,
like it. You feel it in your elbows. I like feeling it right now. You know.
yeah, yeah, and I'll do a couple more trips like this where I just go out and just to catch fish throughout the spring and summer. Um, and like I said, I especially like doing this whenever like it gets real tough for me, and I need to remember how to catch fish. So I always have this in the back pocket. The problem though, croakers are horrendously expensive. They're you know us fishermen, we spend a lot on our gear and stuff like that, and um, fishing croaker is definitely the rich person kind of fishing. Because we were looking at basically $1 a croaker at prices currently right now. They'll probably go down as the season goes on. But at the beginning of this season, they're $1 a croaker. So you're looking at a dozen croaker, you're looking at $12. And you generally go out there for person, you're looking at like 2 or 3 dozen. I like to err on a little on the 3 side, maybe sometimes 4, depending on what I'm doing. Um, and it's expensive. So
That is a very expensive habit
yeah,
to have, just to
yeah,
catch 3 trout and take home and
yeah,
throw
yeah,
back the rest. But I guess you do that more because you love fishing, right? Then you're paying for your happiness.
yep, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
you're not paying to eat, right? Because if you paid to
No.
eat, you're better off going to Katie's Seafood and buying you a nice snapper for that price.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But now, so can you give us a little bit of like, is there a topography that you hit like this time of year, or is this just wherever your ability to use croaker, or like how did you determine like, man, this is a good croaker spot, and I want to throw a croaker? I know we're leading more to croaker. We'll get into spring high tides, but
No, actually, I
I'm
think this is
interested in. I'm really interested in this because like I said, I'm not really a croaker fisherman. I feel like the croaker spots I fished were like shot in the dark, and either I got lucky or I didn't, And to be honest, I just got. It's not for me because the bait bucket, the hooks, all that jazz, and it's like, man, and then the croakers are flopping everywhere, poking you, and you're trying to put that on the hook, and it's just like I at least drop half a dozen, like half a dozen is already counted for going to the water. So maybe get 2 to 3 dozen would make more sense, because I'm dropping half of them for sure. Um,
yeah.
so
So it's
I run
number
into all
one.
these issues, right?
Yeah.
Fishing
Yeah,
with
number
croakers.
one, that's just that's donating to the fish gods. That's what I say when the croaker go back in. Um so that's it's for furthering your luck later whenever you go fishing. But uh so croaker using croakers is actually part of my arsenal, especially if I'm exploring new areas. Um there's certain areas where I go and I consistently catch, you know, regular, not regular, just like keeper size trout. Um, but there are some times when I wonder, are there big trout here? And I don't have the time to really just like fish it hard and really understand the area. Just like I said, I basically at the maximum I fish 4 times a month, which is I know is a lot for a lot of people, but from where I came from, where I was fishing 3 times a week, that's not a lot. Um, and so I if I go to a new area where I've been catching trout consistently, and I'm like, there has to be a big shot here. Sometimes I'll bring croaker there just to see because for some for whatever reason, and I don't know the science behind it. What for whatever reason, trout is just yeah, croaker is just big trout candy. They like it. Um, I'll bring croaker to the area just to see. Okay, I caught this now. I use it and I caught this big trout, so I know there's big trout there, so I really like this area. Let me hone in. Let me spend the time to actually hone in, and I'll do that for a couple times. Um, but it's literally anywhere that you think a trout should be, you can use croaker. I especially like it up against any sort of structure, reefs and rocks and stuff like that. There there should be trout there, and you'll find fish with croaker. Um, So I know a very popular thing that people do, that guys do, is especially during the summer, they'll take croaker out to the jetties. They'll anchor up off the rocks and you cast towards the rocks and you'll catch real nice trout doing that. Redfish too, any sort of predator. Um, if you start catching a bunch of catfish, you may need to move because gaff top love croaker too. And I'd rather catch trout than those slime cats. So
Unless you're targeting them.
unless you're targeted for whatever. I
I
guess if you got the money that you're doing the CCA and you're trying to catch that CCA winning catfish, I guess go ahead. But
so I seen a guy. Was it 3 days ago? Where the tides were coming like almost over the bulkhead, and he had a stringer, and it was a ton of fish, and I was like, "What is that?" And that dude was, "Oh, I got another one." He brought in a hard head, not even silk cat, a hard head, and he stringered it, and he had, I want to say, 30 or 40 hard heads,
oh
maybe
god,
one sail cat, and he was just, that's his fish, man. Like that,
yeah,
he
yeah.
was he was grinning from ear to ear. He was the best fisherman out there. I mean, you should have seen him, man. I was like, man, you take all the you take as much as you can, buddy. But I didn't fish in that spot for long. I was like, yeah, that's probably not the spot for me. So, but when I
Yeah,
saw that stringer, I was like, dude, that's a lot of fish, man. And when he pulled it out and stringered that one hard head, I was like, that's a lot of hard heads.
oh yeah. Hey, but
But
hey, if he's happy, that's good.
hey,
That's good. So
hey, he that's what he wanted to eat, and I that was the first time I've seen that much hard heads on a stringer. So it was a little bit of shock for me,
yeah,
but he was. But if you saw the expression on his face, like that dude was on cloud nine, and I was happy for that dude just to see him
yeah,
that happy. I was like, that's awesome, dude. You
yeah.
take
I
as much
know.
as you want.
Yeah, I know. We joke about like gaff tops and hard heads and whatever. But if you're having a good time, that's really all that matters. Um, and also
I
like
remember croaker fishing was kind of like an embarrassing thing, right? But then like a lot of people like doing the croaker runs. I don't know if a lot of people are into the croaker run and stuff like that. But the croaker fishing used to be a little bit embarrassing for me. I didn't tell anybody, but man, they taste so good.
oh
Little
yeah,
golden croakers.
yeah.
But I was
You
like,
fry them whole.
yeah,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
yeah.
But man, you used to get them big. Like you can't get them now like that. Well, I mean, I can't catch them in the same spot I used to. We used to get these big size croakers, and they fought almost just as hard as a rat red. I mean, they fought pretty hard.
Oh yeah,
Um, for a croaker, I mean, or for a fish, I felt like they fought pretty hard.
yeah.
But that's what I remember. This is probably like 10 years ago, so
Yeah,
maybe more.
a lot has changed, but we now that it's spring, I'm just going full head into fishing flats. Um, and I know those reefs are those like especially towards West Bay, they're probably starting to catch a little bit on fire. Um, the funny thing is I haven't heard anything, but that usually means it's pretty good right now because they're trying to keep it hush hush. um,
Exactly, exactly. They're doing good
uh,
out there. They're just not telling anybody.
yeah, and of
You
course
know.
I know that West Bay has changed tremendously over the last few years, and a lot of people, and myself included, have been saying it's kind of not as good as what it used to be. But that's kind of where the cycle has taken me. It's going towards like that West Bay area where you have a lot of open flats, some deep guts, and then some grass that I can fish up against. And of course, if you know where the reefs are, there's some reefs out there that will hold fish. Um,
I
and
am seeing. I'm going to kind of go into the topic that we're going into today. So
yeah,
like the tides are getting higher, right? Because we got a south wind or certain winds. It's pushing all this water. We had a really like this is the highest I've seen the water pushing, the highest wind that pushed in that much water in a couple of days back to back to back.
yeah,
And I think they showed a video of Sammy G's all underwater, like the parking people got stuck.
yeah,
Um, Not that I fish around there or anything, but but anyways, but it's like for me, I'm seeing more fish come through, more bait come through, and I feel like I just feel like this is gonna probably we probably say this every year, but I feel like this is gonna be our best year of fishing, just because of the amount of bait that I'm seeing and these things that are happening with Mother Nature. I mean, spring we do get high tides, we get big winds, right? But these are like bigger winds, bigger tides, and I think it's pushing more and more bait to the back. As long as we don't get a lot of rain runoff, I think these back spots that we used to fish and we used to hit should be paying off this year. What do you think about these
yeah.
high tides? And
No, one thing for me, I don't. I know that everything affects everything, like the winds and the tides and stuff like that. I will say that, especially from a kayak and even wade fish perspective, all these high tides just opens up more fishing areas for us. Um, and one thing I really love doing, so what, and I think I said this last year because it's cyclical. Around this time we're gonna get those high winds, we're gonna get those high tides. Um, I really love during high tides to really work, the shallow flats or what usually are shallower flats in the morning, um, and then going up towards those flooded grass areas as the day goes on, because those reds and sometimes trout too, they'll just be like right up against those grasslands or even in the grass. I remember the couple of times that I've caught redfish on a frog was during this time because my buddy was like, he was out there the day before, and it's like, there was a bunch of redfish out, you know, deep in the grass, and they kept pulling off. Um, and or it was just it was very hard to present what you wanted to present with the fish in the grass. So it's like it seems like prime bass frog kind of situation. So I was like, that sounds good. Let's go out there. And I remember the first time I didn't understand that the frog fisherman using those frog lures and all this cover, you needed like a broomstick to fish these out. So I'm just using my like my I think it was a McCain rod at the time. It was like a medium action rod, and like they would blow up on it. I get it, and I couldn't horse them out, and I lost so many redfish doing that. It was so cool though because you hear them just moving through that grass, just their tails out of water and just like moving water, or sometimes you just hear a pop and then you can just see some grass move, and just get I think we're throwing white frogs, and just so you can see it, just cast it in that grass and bring it to where they would, and they just come up and just pop it, and then you just bring them out. We didn't catch anything like massive, like a good slot like a good like tournament sized redfish. We caught like some lower end slots, and it was real fun.
man, so like when the winds are high and the tides are high, one of the spots I like is Cold Pass, Titlum
Mm.
Tatlum, that whole area when it floods, those redfish get back in their grass, some of those reefs prevent kayakers on like just a regular tide to get back in certain spots because the reefs are still so high. But with these swollen tides, you're able to get back there in these way back in these back areas, and there's tons of redfish in the grass, in these rocks, these reefs. So you kind of have to know how to fish rocks, reefs, and grass. Uh, I have a setup that I kind of honed in on now, that I like to fish for these up in the grass, or up way up in these reefs, that where I couldn't used to get my kayak before because the reefs were too high, keeping me from going to these back other areas. Um, I like to use a thick leader line, and pitching in the grass where I see them blowing up and exploding. And sometimes you see the schools in the grass, and they're just like blowing up like crustaceans and stuff. So I do use a thicker fluorocarbon leader line when I'm doing that. And I've been broken off on the reefs too with other setups, and that's what made me use a fluoro when I am throwing up in these grass. One of my favorite ones I like to use are weedless hooks on a bait, and I use weedless so I don't get hung up in the grass. Or I should say I don't, but I'm less likely to get hung up with the weedless hook and a bait than I am otherwise with the jig head and
Yeah.
whatnot. What's are you other than frogs? Do you have another setup that you like to throw? And I just told a spot, but if you guys get out there, y'all have fun. But
No,
yeah, go ahead.
no. It's basically, so the water. Usually when I'm doing this, I'm targeting redfish. I'm not looking for trout like in the grass. Not to say that they're not in there, but I'm when I'm doing that, I'm specifically listening and watching for movement. Um, and I'm also saying that I don't do this often. It's just whenever the conditions are right when I'm out there, that may be an option. I think I have like one frog in my kayak crate that I know it's in there. I don't carry, I know people who do this. They'll carry around a frog rod, and I just it's whatever I have, and oh, give me the option. The reason why I have that frog is just because it won't get caught up in that. You can't throw a spook into the grass. So um, yeah, it, and I will say one of the things about these high tides is when I'm saying it opens up fishing areas for you. Um, sometimes these tides are like a foot and a half, sometimes higher than what they're usually supposed to be. So some areas that are dry 90% of the time become covered with water, and sometimes, like I said, like a foot of water. I will say, um, during certain times, this is around this year. Um, Actually, it was so the conditions. This is the conditions. I was fishing in the West Bay area. Super high tides, super windy. I it kind of it was like it wasn't a south wind. It was more like a west wind. More southwest. It was more west southwest kind of wind. So more west than south, but so it kind of wasn't the best wind condition for West Bay, and I was getting kind of blown out. I was waiting, and I just after the morning, I'm like, this isn't working out too well. I'm getting blown up out here. So I drove to another spot where it was a little bit more protected. And the reason why I went there is because the tide was still like it was actually like a foot and a half, 2 foot higher than what it's supposed to be. So it's a super, super high tides. Um, and basically there's like this rock formation that came out, and it usually just touched the water and that was it. But now a good portion of it was, you know, submerged. And I went over there thinking that maybe there'll be fish there, and I was right. There was just trout all up in like you cast up against the rocks and bring them out. I was catching trout and occasional redfish. Um, and I have a picture of it somewhere. It's the first time I caught a fish with like the trout had it when I brought up the trout, it had a mullet sticking out of its mouth. The tail was out of its mouth. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And I strung up the fish, and I got back, and there was actually two fish. When I came back and I put the fish on the next to my car, one of them just spit up a piggy perch like this. And I was like, oh, that's so I've always seen these in pictures that people catch them like that. I've never seen it. I never actually had it happen to me. But yeah, it's like this rock formation, and it became submerged, and they're just right up against it, and it's just all these new areas that the fish want to go. I will say that one of the things is that the conditions were like that for at least a few days. I don't know if I came on like on the first day, it would have happened like that, but um, but yeah, it just like opens up so many fishing areas during situations like this.
Yeah, I mean, I seen where like it like gets over all these like fiddler crabs, holes, and stuff like that, and all these other baits that hang out at the edge of the water line and not really in the water. So when that water gets up there, it's all free for all for all the fish. So all that bait that's hanging at the edge, these redfish get to go in there. Mostly redfish get to go in there
Yeah,
and eat these fish, and then some of these baits, these um, smaller baits, they actually get up in this grass to hide from those fish, and those fish follow them. They follow them
yep,
in these shallow grass areas. Um, yeah, I mean, it reminds me of that story, right? Like a story that I had that I never fished before, and I was going back to this area, and it's like this. You come in, it's a canal, small channel, and then it cuts to the right, and there was a reef on the left side, an opening with a little small gut, and another reef, and I could never make my way past that reef because it was always so up in the air, like you could see the reef. And this time I was able to get up and over that reef, and lo and behold, there was like another whole lake back there. um and I didn't like, I wasn't looking at Google Maps or anything like that or anything, but it was just like, wow, I would have never known this if the tides weren't high enough for me to get up back there. But I mean, I was still catching the fish up front, but man, there was even more fish in the back, this little
yep,
back hidden lake. And it's like, I don't know if the tide gets high enough for the fish to sneak back there, and then it just drops down to normal level or lower, and they just stay back there. And then, you know, or it's just shallow enough for bait to get back there. And when fish do get back there, they just stay back there. You
yeah.
know,
You never know. Like some fish will just go back there, and like you said, there's food. And if it's deep enough, they'll have a place to stay, and you have a nice little fish sanctuary. I do want to mention that yeah, we are live every other Tuesday. You can find us at facebook.com/one last cast podcast, or you can also find us on YouTube. Just search One Last Cast podcast and search us up there. We're live every other Tuesday, or we try to be. You can also find us at onelastcastpodcast.com. We have a website with some written content, some blog stuff, as well as all of our episodes. So uh, yeah, feel free to follow us and find us there. And Jay Lee on the chat, they said they follow the bait. Yeah, um, and that's how it's always going to be. They follow the bait. Um,
yeah, Justin's out there fishing right now. It's
are
a
you saying
flooded
it's a
tide.
flood tide? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And my wife and son are out there right now fishing. That's why they're like on this. Anyways, so
Yeah.
are you guiding, Justin, or if you're still on, or are you just out there testing the waters? If you see that, you can answer that question later.
I see
What
Robert also.
weedless?
Yeah, I was gonna say
Go ahead.
Robert has a question about what weedless hook do you use?
I like these one. I mean, everybody has their own preference. I like a 2 or 3 aught a hook that has a weight on the belly. I like those weights on the belly um, because and it has a spring, right? So I spring lock it and then put the hook. And depending on the bait, right, I switch from like a 3 to 4 aught, depending on how big the bait I'm throwing out there. And so the weight on the belly, it keeps your hook upright, like upwards, the way I'm working my bait, and it bounces off the weight, like especially. So I call it dancing on reef. So I use those for several different reasons, not just only throwing it in the grass, but sometimes I'll dance on like 3 4 foot, reef, or maybe even shallower. The weight on the belly keeps me, you know, just on top of the reef, and I could just work my lure right over the reef, and I'm just hitting that weight, and the lure's not getting hung up. Those are the ones that I like. I know there's some that they don't have weights on them, or the weights are different on there, like so. But
Yeah,
I like them. I like them in the belly part of the hook.
yeah.
Uh,
So I use owner. I like the owner swim jig hooks, not swim jig, but the weedless setups. They have the same thing where it's the spring on the front with the weight. I have some of them where are basically they're um, what do you call it? They're weed. They don't have any weight on them, and then I'll use the DOA pinch weights um, to I'll pinch them depending on the lure up and down that hook. Um, the reason why I do that because certain baits you have to test this out. Like just fill up your sink and see how it falls. But some of these, whenever baits are in the water, they fall differently. Some of them have a little bit more plastic in the front, so they fall, front facing down. Sometimes they're perfectly buoyant and they fall slowly in the center. So if they fall like that in the center, then usually I want to mimic that, and I'll put the weight on the towards the center of the in line with that of the bait. That way that it just falls straight down and looks more natural. Yeah, so that's one thing that you need to do is you need to test it out. But another thing too is the weedless setups are great for not only reefs but also fishing grass because if you get it right, you can fish right above the grass and not actually in the grass, right above it, and you can keep it swimming at that level where the fish will see it and it won't be any obstruction. You won't catch any grass on it, and they'll come up and just inhale baits like that, and that's always fun because it's a subsurface bait. You're fishing these grass flats, and all of a sudden your bait just especially if you use like a pearl or white or a chartreuse or pink, these straight really bright flashy colors, and you can see them from a mile away, and you can see it. You're swimming it, all of a sudden it just disappears. That's always fun. So
So when the tide swells up, right? What winds are we looking for if we're those people that do our homework before we go fishing to know that hey, these winds are going to bring in a lot of water to the bay and probably flush, or not flush, but be higher than
flood.
normal,
Yeah.
flood these grassy areas. What winds are we looking for, and how long, miles per hour, stuff like that.
I'm thinking it's usually just like these south straight, any toward a south direction winds, and sustained for like 20 miles an hour plus.
For
I
like
know,
a day or two, maybe, or
yeah,
maybe a whole
yeah,
day.
yeah. I think you need at least a day. Um, and I'm not saying this is 100% right, but my experience, that's what I've been seeing. Like, one day of it may raise it a little bit. I don't think it's to do it any sort of do anything else, but multiple days you're looking at real high tides. Um, and I will say one thing that to take in consideration, um, if you have a lot of days of sustained high winds and the tide kind of lines up with it, the day after the winds die down, or the day the wind dies down, and you have a real hard outgoing tide, that's money too. So going out there with you had these real high tides, everything's flooded, and and going out and just sitting in front of a drain, and all that water's flushing out afterwards. That's money because you just all those fish just went up back in there, and now they're just working. They're all these areas are receding, and so some of them who aren't native to that area, I think that some of the fish who aren't native to that area, they'll start running out because they're not sure how far the water's gonna go out, and they'll just start coming out. So another little tip right there as well.
That's cool. Are you using heavier jig heads on these drains with stronger tides going out?
Yeah, you kind of have to. I've been like a quarter ounce guy, but there are times whenever some of these areas that I'm fishing with when the tides are rushing out like this, they can get real strong. So also another cautioning thing. Yeah, it's not nothing to mess around with, but going up to a half or 3/8 or a half is sometimes what you have to do. Um,
Yeah,
or if you,
I
yeah,
like quarter ounce, especially on windy days too.
yeah,
Most of the time, I'm fishing quarter ounce on windy days because it helps me cast with my bait caster. It's difficult to throw a 16th of an ounce jig head and the wind's blowing, even when it's at your back. Sometimes it just doesn't catch right,
yeah,
and it causes problems to cast in certain target areas.
yeah. I
Um,
do want to mention and say that we mentioned it before. There's going to be a lot of days generally during spring. There's going to be real high winds. Um, I mean, yeah, you can cancel your fishing trip if you need to, but just use the wind to your advantage. Obviously, if it's a strong south wind, more than likely, unless you're a hardcore surf fisherman, you're not going to be fishing the surf. You're going to just target the south side of Galveston Island. So that's really anywhere that you can walk and wade basically on the island is going to be, somewhat protected. Obviously, I wouldn't go out to the middle of the bay because you're going to get beat up like that. Um, but there are tons of area, not tons. There are areas in around Galveston, up and down the complex where you can kind of hide away from the wind. Um, it's just easy to explain, like anywhere you can walk in at, and it's a real stiff south wind. Generally, you'll be protected because you have the marsh behind you and the wind to your back, so you can just work that shoreline basically.
Yeah, regardless of what Charles Barkley says, the waters can.
Yeah.
There's some areas that are protected, and the water is a little all right to fish. It's not all garbage brown or.
Yeah.
That was funny.
Hey, I think the saying goes that
But he
when
was right. Charles Barkley was right. Our water is a little dirty, and but I mean they're still fishing it, right? So
hey,
it's good for us.
you can still tell you can tell a girl who has brown eyes, they have ocean water eyes because it's just Galveston water.
That's a good one. Oh man. Yeah, if you take offense to Charles Barkley, sorry about that. Try to go fishing and relieve some steam. I know a lot of people got ticked off about it, but I thought it was truthful and it was funny.
I think the in the marketing and PR world, any press is good press. In this case, there's been a lot of people talking about Galveston who have never been to Galveston before, and I think it's going to help tourism.
Oh
Just
yeah,
because,
hopefully, right?
yeah, like, oh, Charles Barkley said that Galveston's kind of this cesspool of a backwater area. Let's go check it out, and they'll
Yeah.
and they will be pleasantly surprised on what Galveston has to offer. So.
Anyways,
But
man, our time's running out. And is there any words of wisdom you like to share with
oh man,
our
now
listeners?
you're
Yes, I
putting
did
me
it
on the spot.
again. Did it
Yeah.
again.
um yeah, I think one of the major things, um I know we talked a lot about Croaker to start, which by the way, if the beginning of the show was basically just about Croaker. Um
And I'm gonna
uh
add that was a lot of useful information about croaker fishing for people that are not so handy with croaker fishing. Like I felt like I want to give it another shot, you know. So thank you for that because I'm not a good croaker fisherman, you know.
yeah.
But go ahead.
Yeah, it's you know, get out when you can. Uh I know we joke a lot about Croaker, and Croaker fishermen, and it's all in jest. Um, and just whatever you do to get out there and go fishing, you do you. Um, I will still being a snobby person as I am, I'll I'll talk down to I'm doing air quotes, talk down to the croaker guys, but no, but seriously, it's a lot of fun. Always have it in your back pocket. Wherever you go to catch wherever you go to catch trout, if you want to test it out, explore the area a little more, or if you don't know if there's trout there, or if you just want to have a good time, use Croaker. Croaker's good. Just it's a little expensive right now. Actually, I even think I would even say right now, it's just Croaker is going to be expensive regardless. Excuse me. I think even whenever it's in peak season, you're looking at probably like $8 a dozen, maybe. So that's still pretty expensive, but um, yeah, we have a lot of people that are going to be. It looks like on the chat they're going to go use Croaker and try it out. Robert's going to go use it, go target hardheads. Good luck to you guys. No, I'm you do you, like I said. But yeah, just it's fishing. It should be just about having fun. Go out there, get the bites, fight the fish, have fun. So that's my parting words of wisdom for you all. And
Oh, I like to add. Sorry, I sent somebody a package of Merrill the Pearl lures, and it
mhm.
was actually one of our listeners. that sent me their address for something totally different. It was another prize package. So if you're listening and you didn't get those lures that I promised you, message me your address again, or I'll try to look through our older live videos and find you again. So I got an email like, "Hey Merle, thanks for the lures, but and the prize package, but what was this for?" And I'm like, "Didn't you ask for the lures?" He's like, "What lures?" I was like, "Oh my gosh." So I'll look through that. If you didn't get those lures, are you the one that I'm sending the lures to, Mike, or you? You're not the one that I sent the package to. Anyways, I'll figure it out. I'll find out. I'll get you your lures. Sorry about that inconvenience. I'll jump right on that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Another thing too. Yeah, we did send out. I sent out a prize pack to one of our listeners last month. For the yeah, for last month it was actually I think it was for the month of March, and I was just backed up with work, so I wasn't able to send it until like basically mid-April. Um, let's do another contest for those of you who are listening for the month of May. Just for those of you who are already here, you commented, great, good job. Um, and for those of you who are listening, you can find this show right here every other Tuesday at facebook.com/one less cast podcast. Just find our show. It's episode 52 on our Facebook page or our YouTube page, and just type in a comment. It's just, how are you doing? What have you been catching? And at the end of the month of May, I will pull a random winner to send a prize pack to. So yeah, so I'll give it's open to everybody. So you can be listening now on YouTube or anywhere on a podcast, such as Spotify, Amazon, Google, whatever. And you can enter to win just by commenting on this video. Yeah, so you can find out at facebook.com/one less cast podcast. And again, you can always find us online on our website at onelesscastpodcast.com. And also, before we head off, I definitely want to give a shout out to our sponsors again, Dirty South Kayak Anglers. If you're looking for a group to talk fishing and kayaking with up and down the Texas coast, we'll search Dirty South Kayak Anglers or DSKA on Facebook. Great group of guys and gals there. 4A Printing, if you're looking for some good merch, such as towels, custom buffs, or anything like that, reach out to Aaron. He'll help you get you set up. And Knock and Tail Lures, our favorite soft plastics. They have an internal rattle in the tail that just drives fish crazy. Been using them to great effect for the last few years. It's a great soft plastic to have, a staple in both Merriel and I's arsenal. And of course, Brittany Solesky, if you're looking for a realtor here in Houston, either residential or commercial, whether you're trying to buy a home, sell a home, anything like that, reach out to Brittany. You can find her at 281-740-0498 or BrittanySolesky@gmail.com. That's BRITNEY Solesky at gmail.com. Well, thanks again, Merrill, for joining us. It's going to be windy for the next forever until summer hits, but tight lines, and we'll see you out there, right?
Take care, bud. Take care, y'all.